I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Hotel Mars, the mystery. During a routine, well, nothing's routine at ISS spacewalk, within these last weeks, a member of the ISS crew, this brought the end of EVA 23 last month, Luca Parmitano, his spacesuit started filling with water. What water? He felt that he was at risk of drowning. He tasted the water, and it was not what water was on board his spacesuit. This is like a miniature spaceship, I'm told to think of it. So they pleaded with him, don't touch it, don't have anything to do with the water. They got him in. They ended the spacewalk. The suit now is the center of a probe at NASA, a mystery, because what caused the spacesuit leak is critical to understand how the ISS crews continue with routine spacewalk to maintain maintenance and also for emergencies. We welcome now David Livingston, Dr. Space of the Space Show. David, very good evening to you. Take your spacesuit helmet off so you can talk. Good evening, David.
Good evening, and I don't need it here in San Francisco, so we're fine.
Pablo de Leon joins now. Professor Pablo de Leon, Senior Research Associate, Human Space Systems Director at the University of North Dakota Spacesuit Laboratory, Department of Space Studies. We go to the man himself. He's also part of the John D. Odegaard School of Aerospace Sciences at the University of North Dakota, a colleague of David Livingston. Pablo, Professor, a very good evening to you. I hope I have presented the mystery correctly. In this spacewalk a month ago, the suit was flooding. At this point, do we believe the astronaut, Luca, was actually at risk of drowning? Could he have died out there? Good evening to you, Pablo.
Good evening, John, and good evening, David. It's great to be in your program this evening. Yes, you actually stated the problem correctly, and yes, actually he was under a very serious risk because due to the microgravity environment, to the lack of weight, the water was floating around his helmet. He could actually drown in that water. So it was a very serious issue. That's why at one point he decided to go back to the airlock. At that time he had no communications because his communication system was full of water, so he couldn't even communicate with his partner. So he had to point to the airlock and try to get there as soon as possible.
David?
Hi, Pablo. How are you?
Fine.
Why is it so hard to figure out what went wrong? I know they're simulating the accident and they've made a video of it, and they still can't figure it out. Why is that so hard? There can't be that many working parts in it, can there be?
Well, what I think of the system is you have to remember the spacesuit that has been used in the International Space Station is actually a suit that was developed under the shuttle program, and because it was developed specifically for the space shuttle, it was designed to come back to Earth after each EVA, after each extravehicular activity. So it's not meant to be a system that is developed to stay long periods of time in space and be serviced and maintained in the International Space Station, because there was always this chronicle lack of funding to develop a more advanced spacesuit that could be maintained and serviced on Earth. NASA just had to rely on what they had, which was the shuttle spacesuit. So that's what they have up there. So the astronauts are doing their best. The source of water can be 2 or 3 different sources. At first, what I thought it was, the astronauts wear a piece of garment underneath the suit that is called the liquid cooling ventilation garment, which is a piece of undergarment, if you like, which is covered by plastic tubing, and those tubing circulates water. And what it does is to remove the heat, the metabolic heat, the heat that is produced by the astronaut body during his or her work. And I really thought it was a leak from one of these tubing that was collecting through the back of the helmet. Now I'm not that sure because the astronauts just tested the suit again in orbit, and it's without the liquid cooling garment, and there is still that leak around. So I'm pretty sure it's in the portable life support system, which is the backpack, the one that brings the consumables to the astronaut, the oxygen, and removes the carbon dioxide, etc. So the problem may be there. The issue is that, like I said before, it's not a system that was developed to be serviced in space, unlike the Russian suit.
Pablo, if I may restate this with an analogy to see if I understand. The spacesuit that the Americans and the Italians and the others use on the American side of this was designed like a Formula One racer. And it's meant to have a crew that attends to it minutely, routinely during a race. But without the shuttle, there's no crew, there's no race, there's just the Formula One racer sitting out there by itself, and they have to solve its problem on the ISS, right? They have to do everything there. It never comes back.
Yeah, the Formula One is a very good analogy. You have to think that the space shuttle program was developed to fly hundreds of times, almost weekly, and it was going to bring in and out payloads and astronauts back and forth. As we all know, it didn't work that way,
right.
But all the hardware was designed that way. So the space shuttle suit that we are using right now in the International Space Station was designed in the 70s to be flown on the 80s and be replaced for something better by the 90s. Well, that never happened, and here we are, 2013, still using the space shuttle suits, right? So yes, I mean, we are still using a suit that was developed to be taken to space 2 weeks, bring it back, disassembled entirely, inspected, serviced, and sent back to space.
David?
Pablo, is there a big difference between what the American side is using for an EVA suit and the Russians use?
Yes, the Russian Orlan spacesuits were developed to be mainly serviced at the Salyut and Mir space stations. So they were developed under a very different set of requirements. And I'm not saying they're better. They're just different because the Russians designed them in a way that the repair and maintenance can be done in a modular way. In fact, there were several opportunities where Russian cosmonauts had to modify the suits for a different cosmonaut, so they have to resize the legs, change the gloves, etc. And they did it in space, and it works just fine. So it's just a different kind of suit. So yeah, again, it's difficult to say if they're better or worse. They are just developed for a different environment.
The logic of this, Professor, is that the Russian suit is more trustworthy right now. So shouldn't everyone switch over to the Russian suit? Are there enough up there?
Well, as far as I remember, they have just two, and normally just the Russian cosmonauts use them, because the American astronauts are trained on the shuttle EMU suit,
right.
on the American spacesuit. And also there are many differences. For example, the Russian spacesuit works at a slightly higher pressure, so it's more difficult to bend than the U.S. suit. So you have to get some extra training and extra strength to be able to use it properly. All the systems are totally different, so the American astronauts will have to rely on a totally different communication system. It's a totally different game. There were, in the past, American astronauts who used the Russian spacesuit, but right now they were just using the NASA suits.
David?
Pablo, if we jump forward to innovations, is anything happening with the positive pressure type of spacesuit that would replace these?
Well, the concept that David is referring to is a concept that has been pioneered in the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, with a new concept of a spacesuit that instead of being a human-shaped, you can say a bag, which is what is a spacesuit is today, is a kind of a skin-tight suit. It's a very, I would say, sci-fi looking, and NASA spent a considerable amount of time and funding trying to study this possibility, but so far it's just studies. I believe that perhaps in 5-10 years it may be a possible venue because you need to develop new textile technologies to be able to develop the kind of very tight fabric that you need for this particular use. It shows some promise for the future, but right now, if we are talking of the space projects that will take place in the next 10 years or so, we are stuck with the pressure suit, what we have right now.
Pablo de Leon, Senior Research Associate. He is Director of the Human Space Systems at the University of North Dakota Spacesuit Laboratory, also Department of Space Studies, the John D. Odegaard School of Aerospace Sciences in North Dakota. David Livingston, Dr. Space of The Space Show. I'm John Batchelor, Hotel Mars, episode end.